What up, my Pro Design Builder family? I'm Sam, also known as the Pro Design Builder. I'm the best in the business, and it's not even close. Today, we're going to be covering the most important topic that we are ever going to cover, which is land costs and the importance of land costs. And also, the importance of land costs just doesn't have to do with what the actual value is how it affects any and every deal. So we're going to be breaking down the cost of land and how to structure it right. And also in this particular lesson, we're going to be learning how to actually define land costs. So the purchase price is not the actual land cost. So we're going to be breaking down what that actually looks like. And then the three biggest mistakes investors make when buying land, we're going to be have to cover those landmines as well. The formula developers use to know what to pay. And then lastly, how to protect your profits before you ever close on them. So let's dive in. So before we get started, this group is specifically for real estate investors who want to make the transition into new development. They don't know where to start. I am your guide, right? So for me, I understand this subject topic well because I was once in your shoes, looking to make the leap, but I made the leap without a lot of advice, a lot of preparation. So I made a lot of mistakes. But anyways, that's learning lessons for me. But how I got started is probably around 2011. My wife was in med school. She was supposed to go to med school in the islands in Anguilla, and I was going to be paying for it. I was a business owner. I owned several businesses at the time, and I just remember she wrote me a letter, and she said that she didn't want to go, and it caught me off guard because I'm a power couple type of guy, but it forced me to kind of regroup. And I remember I said to her, um, what are you gonna do if you if you don't go? And she said, let's look into real estate. And then she handed me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then after that, I started consuming the book, and it really piqued my interest on the concepts that Robert Kiyosaki was talking about. So it led me down the path of going down and going into a seminar. And then the seminar really sparked my interest, and it took one more seminar. And then I started taking messy action from there. And then I was green as a real estate investor, as most people are before they take messy action. But I had that tenacity, and I had friends that I could reach to. I had my buddy Mike. I could call him up. He worked at the title company. He was going to be handling the title work. He was going to make sure that my deal was structured well on paper, and that's exactly what happened. And I got my first deal, and then I wanted to be a flipper, and then I got my first flip deal. I hired a contractor, I fired a contractor, I hired another contractor, I fired another contractor, I hired another contractor, and then after my third contractor, I realized this business has contractor problems, and I wasn't going to be happy until I started running projects on my own, and I dictated the pace and execution of these projects, which kind of gave me a base for what I started doing with investors. I didn't have a ton of money. So, what I did have is resources and the ability to put something together from concept to completion. And all the investor had to do was come to the front side of closing and come to the back side of closing. And that's kind of how I got my base for design build before I got into construction full time. And with design build, what I realized is it takes you from concept to completion, and the systematic approach attached to taking clients from concept to completion is the exact thing that I've been doing for the last 9 years. But the difference is it's been for clients and not investors. So I decided to switch focus and decide to help investors figure this whole thing out. So that's kind of what this is about now. But if you haven't already hit like and subscribe, I suggest that you do that so we can continue to make you content like this. So let's kind of dive into what this training is all about. So Land cost is more than just a purchase price. And I'm going to break this down to you. It's going to be very important for you to know and understand that it's not just a purchase price. So, to get the actual cost of the land, you need the purchase price, closing costs, carrying costs, entitlements, surveys, impact fees, if you have to demo a property, and the time it takes to put all of that together is the actual cost of the land, right? So the land is no good unless the land is buildable. Now, you've had to take several different steps. You had to cross several different steps and several different paths to make the land buildable. Now it's ready to build on, right? So all those costs need to be considered. Obviously, some of those are broken out into soft costs and stuff like that, but that's the cost to purchase the land and to get the land ready to build, right? And you need to be thinking like that to get the percentages right to make sure that your projects come out profitable the way that you want them. So here's a tip: land isn't ready until it's buildable, right? And understand that buildable means that you need to cross certain valleys before, right? So I'll give you an example, right? We recently completed a 22 unit townhouse community. The purchase price of the land was about $1 million, right? So checks off on so many different levels of for land costs for us with what the sellout would be. So you know, we got the land cheap. It was pre-plumbed, so there was some engineering costs that we could save on, some underground plumbing costs that we could save on. It was already plumbed for a community, so we were going to be using some of the similar channels. So we got a discount on the cost to purchase, but what we discovered is because it was pre-plumbed for probably over 10 years, that not all of it was good anymore, right? But that was after discovery, after we closed on it. We realized that, hey, listen, some of this is not going to be any good and has to be done over. So then that increased some costs there that we thought we were going to be able to save. But since we got the land so cheap based on the sellout, then it worked out exactly the way that we needed it to. So let's talk about the three biggest mistakes I see, right? Is buying based on emotion, right? That's a great location. That's the things that you hear. That's the emotion of it, right? It's a mathematical equation. It either works mathematically or it doesn't. There's no room for emotions for it to work, right? And that's literally how the bank look at it. Does the deal pencil? Can you complete the things that you want to complete on this particular parcel and have a profit margin at the end? That's what determines if the deal works or not works, right? So mistake number 2 is not calling the city before buying. And that's one of the things that is important, is before you even put a deal under contract, you should have a system to go into the city, ask all your questions, get all your due diligence done, and then now you know and understand all the parameters before you even fire off a contract to that particular parcel, right? We're not in that marketplace where we need to be firing and moving so quick that everybody else is going to move on that project. So due diligence like that, meeting with the city prior, meeting on zoning, meeting on density, understanding the setbacks, understanding the height restrictions, getting all of that detail up front will save you time in the back when you're making an offer, right? And mistake number 3 is overpaying because you don't know your numbers, right? So this happens to a lot of new investors where they don't understand the purpose of certain profit margins and how to correctly look at the project. And I was talking to somebody, and they had went through a build and then they had made about like 30-40 grand. Well, in 50 to 70 grand is what's made on a house flip, to go through all of those hoops and all of those hurdles to build a house and only make 30-40 grand. There's something that's not quite right there. So identifying that you could be overpaying for the land, which will affect the deal, will determine the profit margin You can't make up for it in sales price a lot of times, right? The price, the comps are the comps, right? The comps of what's selling per square foot in this particular area are the comps, right? And you have to work your way backwards from there, right? So big mistake there. So understanding the developer's formula, that changes everything, right? So here's how you should be looking at it. You start with the ARV, or sales price, or comps in that particular area for the same type of unit that you're looking to sell, minus the construction costs, all right, minus the soft costs, and then minus the profit margin, right? So what that's going to leave you with is the maximum land value. So that's the max you can pay for that particular parcel. So let's just use that as an example, right? So let's say this particular house will sell for $1.2 million, right? So if I back out the construction cost, let's say that's $500,000, and then I back out the soft cost, which is like $200,000, my profit target should be around $200,000 on that transaction. So my maximal land cost could only be $300,000. So what is that telling you? So if the homeowner is asking you for $400,000 for this piece of land, does the deal work? Right? That's obvious. The deal doesn't work mathematically, right? You would need to pay that $300,000 mark for it to be an actual deal, for you to be able to deal with the fluctuation of the marketplace and still be profitable, right? I stick to my guns on that. It's very important that you know and understand why land cost is so important, right? So let's talk about hidden costs people ignore. Time is cost, right? So getting the deal prepared, like it takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months for permits. Sometimes it has to go through architecture before it gets to permits, and then you sandwich that time together, and then another 6 months or so for build time and approval. So meanwhile, you're accumulating interest payments, opportunity costs, market risk. These are things that are fluctuating in the air that can affect your deal. So the amount of time you spend on the project is going to be important in understanding how much this is going to cost, right? So I have an example here. A cheap lot that takes 18 months to build on can be more expensive than a higher price buildable lot, right? That's just the facts, right? The longer it takes to execute on the project, the more it's going to cost, right? So important stuff for you to know. What should you do before buying land, right? So call the building department. Absolutely important for you to do. Confirm all the zoning and what's allowable use. Ask about setbacks, lot coverage, pervious and impervious, to understand that. Height limitations, parking requirements. These are all things you need to be aware of. Also check for utilities. Is there city water? Is it well water? Is there sewer? Is there electric? How far is the home run to get from the electric to get to your property? All of that's going to factor into the cost. Is it in wetlands? Are you going to need piles versus can you do slab on grade? All of those things are going to be important in understanding your due diligence to know what the land is going to cost. And if you are a land flipper, or you're just newer to the business, the more that you know and understand how to have the proper outlook on this project, the better deals that you could bring to your buyers to be able to serve them well. So hopefully you got a lot out of that particular training, how to identify land and make sure that you're getting the right costs. Outside of that, have a great day.